Yeah, it is. They look awful.
I can't believe it's that expensive. I mean, I can believe it.
Yeah.
Do we have everybody? Where are they? So I'm kind of thinking once this turns 6, I'm just going to wait another couple of minutes just to be safe, since we clearly all don't have anything else to do.
I never see uncomfortable silence in the meeting notes. From the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
And I keep looking. I don't want to sign off on it unless it's in there.
Yeah, it's
Oh, for real? You can start recording till 6?
what? Yeah, it's recording now.
I like it.
Yeah, I think you put it in there. First thing.
Awkward silence.
Just real awkward.
And now we're starting. Call the meeting to order. Those that care to, please stand for opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Cameron, please.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for this community, and thank you for the citizens that we get to represent. And Lord, I just pray to God that you would guide and direct us in all that we do and all that we say tonight. Lord, as we approach September 11th, may we never forget, Lord, the lives that were lost and those people that continue to fight and that have given up their life for our protection and our freedoms. Be with us and guide us and direct us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. Thank you for being here this evening. I would like to start things off by opening it up for citizen participation. The purpose of this is to talk about something that is not on the agenda, so if we have an agenda item that you want to speak on, wait to that. This is for people that want to talk about something that's not on the agenda. If anyone's here, please approach the podium, state your name and what you'd like to talk about. That's you guys. I was trying to be polite.
I'm sorry, I thought we were on your agenda tonight. Good evening. My name is Natalie Scrivener. I'm the finance director at the city of Bolivar, and I'm here tonight with our city clerk from Bolivar and Tracy Mason, our assistant to the clerk. We are here tonight to present a certificate to your city clerk, Laura, tonight, and our purpose of being here tonight is to recognize her for having been awarded the designation of the Certified Municipal Clerk certification from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. The certification is a combination of education and experience, and Laura is to be commended for her perseverance in achieving this goal. I'm a little nervous, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
And encouraged to continue pursuing her education. The IIMC works to improve the professionalism of the municipal clerks with more than 15,000 members in 49 U.S. and 9 Canadian municipal clerk associations. The IIMC continues to strive to ensure that the education provided is relevant to the needs and the position of the city clerks. Additionally, you as elected officials are to be commended for your support of Laura as she continues to work towards her certification, and it clearly demonstrates that you recognize that the knowledge she has received at the education sessions is of great benefit to you and the other staff members and your citizens. And now, Laura, on behalf of the Missouri City Clerks and Finance Officers Association and the Southwest Division and the Public Relations Committee, along with your friends and peers in the Southwest Division, we would like to present to you the certification of appreciation and congratulate you that you have received your CMC, and we hope that this is your continued commitment and lifelong learning experience in your career as the city clerk for the City of Republic.
Nice.
Speech.
Does everybody get pictures or just them?
Thank you for coming all the
Yes.
way over. I really appreciate it.
Tell Tracy I said hello.
Thank you. Well, that's a good way to start a meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. We all knew you were awesome, but now you have flowers to prove it.
It's on record.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak about anything not on the agenda? All right. Seeing none, I will close citizen participation. We will move on to the consent agenda. Please review items number 1 and 2, and if you have any questions, I'm sure the city would be glad to answer. If not, I would entertain a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Moving on to boards, commissions, and committees schedule. Planning and zoning meeting is on September 12th, 2022 and October 3rd, 2022. City council meetings are on September 20th and October 4th. Moving on to old business and tabled items. This is item number 3 on the agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 22-50 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council establishing a procedure for disclosing potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain officials.
Do I need to say Madam Clerk with letters behind it? Is that
No.
CCM?
Too many.
Madam Clerk CCM? No? All right. Now, council, this was presented last time. Hopefully we've had an opportunity to speak with the city with any questions. Is there any update from the city?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Questions from council? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 22-50, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will now take a roll call vote on our computers. Please click refresh. Cast your vote. Hit submit. And the ordinance passes 8-0. Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda. This is in the new business category. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 22-51 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council amending the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri by amending Title I, Government Code, Chapter 105, Elections, Section 105.030, Declaration of Candidacy, Dates for Filing, Section 105.040, Declaration of Candidacy, Notice to Public, and Section 105.060, Notice of Elections.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, the penalty for doing good work is getting more work, so do you mind presenting on
I
this?
got that. This ordinance is just to change our code to meet the requirements of the Secretary of State's office and the Greene County and Christian County Clerk's offices, who are our election authority. The section of code we're proposing to amend predates the adoption of the current municipal code, which was codified in 2009, has outdated timeframes. Secretary of State's office releases a calendar which shows the prior year, current year, and upcoming year's dates, and because they are able to change those timelines every year, it's best for our code to just reference them as opposed to having specific dates. This year, they changed it and reduced it by a week and moved it by a week. So this way we can always be in compliance with them without having to change our code to match their timelines. The second change proposed would allow for digital submission as opposed to what currently says by fax. Greene County Clerk's office prefers email, I believe, over fax, and I think I've faxed one thing in the past 3.5 years. So we would like to get current with our timeframes and just go straight digital and make it flexible in our submission. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions from council on this issue?
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
does this change any dates that we currently have according to ordinance, that this is just basically going off of what the Secretary of State releases on his calendar?
Right, and we've been required to follow it all along. We're just trying to get it to match
Update
now.
to match.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, please remember this is a first read. If you do have questions, get with staff before the next meeting. Moving on to item number 5 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 22-52 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title I, Government Code, Chapter 150, Fraud Prevention and Detection Policy, Section 150.010, adoption of policy, adopting a revised policy entitled City of Republic's Fraud Prevention and Detection Policy.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, Megan Cook, Finance Director. This policy was last adopted in 2015. Since it's about 6 years old, we're looking to review it and give any updates. So with that, the most notable changes are removal of the fraud investigator term throughout the document. We realigned the policy to outline the utilization of multiple departments that may be pulled in for an investigation as needed rather than one individual set. We removed the business ethics section and moved it to another policy that it aligns with more, and then just corrected grammar and made the policy a little more concise and consistent. And
Thank
I will
you, ma'am.
welcome any questions.
Any questions from council?
How
Yes, sir.
often is fraud being investigated?
Since I've been here 5 years, we haven't had a fraud investigation, but it's good to have a policy set so that everyone knows to do it in that instance.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Campbell?
so just to elaborate, there was the one situation as noted in our own audit this year where there was a theft that was identified in our policies, but this was more of a, it didn't require an investigation because it was, the funds were recovered within or identified in the first 8 hours. So what it does for us though is we need to update this, especially when it comes to when you're borrowing money with the S&P. How long are these updated? Are you going through them, and has everyone been trained and educated? So making sure that we've updated this for the next S&P call was probably what drove it, but I wouldn't call it an investigation, but I would say that our own policy and the way that we do cash handling helped us detect immediately or find any loss of funds that were recovered that staff identified.
Thank you, sir. Hearing that, any other questions? Please remember, this is a first read, so if you have questions, get with staff before the next meeting. Moving on to item number 6 on our agenda, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 22-53 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title I, Government Code, Chapter 110, Administration Policies, Article 2, Purchasing and Surplus Property Disposal, Section 110.020.01, Purchasing Policy and Procedures, and adopting a revised policy entitled City of Republic's Purchasing and Disposal Policy.
Thank you, ma'am. Looks like you're on a roll tonight.
Yes, Megan Cook, Finance Director. This policy was last updated in 2021. The main reason behind the changes in this one is in emergency expenditures and then adding a provision in here for competitive bidding, which I'll go into. The current economic constraints and market constraints are the main driving factors. So emergency expenditures, we defined what that means and provided examples of what falls into those categories. And we added a provision in there that allows the city administrator to approve an emergency purchase not to exceed $100,000, given that a full report would then go before council at the very next meeting to certify the emergency expenditure and provide necessary details. The reason behind this is the current economy requires more lead time, and time is of essence when it comes to locking down materials, especially in a state of emergency. The market fluctuation, we added in a provision in there as well to allow for an adjustment of 25% in either direction, going up or down after a bidding process has been completed, so that we don't have to go back out for rebid and then bring it before council again. This is to cover cost fluctuations, market volatility, or supply chain issues. These adjustments will need to be approved by the city administrator or their designee, and adequate funds would still have to be budgeted for. This exception is not exempt from the purchasing thresholds or limitations, so they still have to follow those. And it shall expire within 1 year. This is just to allow during the current economic constraints, like I said, or markets that we're dealing with today. Other than that, we had to add in lease reporting thresholds that we had to have set by the city administrator for GASB 87, which is also known as the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This is for our auditor and what they have to comply to when it comes to our audit standards. For this, we chose to set $75,000 for any lease for Public Works Department and $50,000 for any other lease citywide. We have combined all exceptions for the bidding process under one umbrella to be more user-friendly instead of being dispersed throughout the document, so it's in one spot and more readable. We've added in more in-depth details in regards to the responsibilities and best practices for petty cash and purchasing card holders. And we've corrected, again, kind of some grammar inconsistencies to make the policy more concise and consistent. And with that, I will take any questions.
Questions from council?
Megan, what would fall under that emergency expenditure?
Oh, yes.
First one.
Basically, it's the welfare of, let me pull it up so I can read it exactly. But it is sorry, of course, I should have had it flagged.
You're good. It's more out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
so while she's looking for that, the specific example which prompted this change goes back to the Schuler Creek lift station that failed. If you recall back in, so these policies, like I asked staff to do, is to, not in the middle of the summer with all the development, is to bring them in the fall. And so a lot of these are like cleanup policies, but that was, what's driving this is when we had to come back and say that pump could fail, sewage going to in the creek, and so that would constitute what it's looking for. But I can't remember this. I think it's harm to public health and safety. If there is a harm to the public's health and safety or financial position, that we would do that. And I think it was set at 50,000 where the pump was 127,000.
So why
Sir.
would you write it for, if using that as your springboard, right? Why would you write it at 100?
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
So what I would suggest is we're going to bring an amendment, we talked about this, that would say that I would have up to 200,000 with the consent of the mayor. So the original language required me to notify the mayor to make him aware if we had it. But we have such a rare occasion where we would spend over 100,000 just for the auditors. I want to make sure there's a provision that keeps a level of internal control. So if we had that same pump go out, the provision would kick in that I would have to have the mayor's consent that he's been notified. I'm going to issue that clause not to exceed 150,000. He's consented to me making that purchase, and then we still have to follow the same notification.
Sure.
So you'll be seeing an amendment, because we talked about in our admin team meeting today at the next meeting. So we wanted to go through the first read, but the next meeting you'll actually see a provision that says up to 200,000 with the mayor's consent.
I can go through that definition real quick.
Thank you.
So an emergency is defined as an unexpected situation of a serious nature that demands immediate action affecting public health, loss of service, a threat to the community, or a risk of substantial financial loss to the city unless the required supplies, materials, equipment, or services are obtained in the most expeditious means possible. This includes purchases for construction projects due to the demand and supply that may directly impact project completion and timeliness.
Awesome. Thank you for finding that.
Yeah,
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
absolutely.
All right. Moving on to, wait, I'm just making sure we covered everything. Yep. All right. Moving on to item number 7 on our agenda. This is a resolution. This is 22-R-54, a resolution of the City Council awarding the bid of waterline materials at Hankins Farm Industrial Park to Core and Main LP. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 22-R-54, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Garrett Brickner, Assistant Builds Administrator. So the city went out to sealed bid for the waterline materials for the Hankins project, which is part of the developers agreement that we previously signed with them. As part of this agreement, we are going to purchase the waterline materials, and then they are going to reimburse us for the purchase. Along with that, we're also going to install the waterline materials. and they will be responsible for reimbursing us for any rental equipment or non-city labor as part of that agreement. So we went out to bid. We only had one bidder, but the bidder was consistent with what our price estimate was for it. They are also the only bidder that bid on our bulk bid material. It's been very difficult to get bidders on waterline materials just because of the demand everywhere. We believe that's a good price, and we are comfortable moving forward with them. This will actually be taken out of the general fund to protect the water reserve cash, because we do have other projects that we have that are reimbursable that have not yet been reimbursed into that fund. So with this project being about $245,000 in materials, we're going to take that out of the general fund, and then it will be immediately reimbursed to the general fund. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Well, seeing none, and as this is a resolution, we can call it immediately to a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of resolution 22-R-54, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution carries 8-0. Moving on to item number 8 on our agenda, this is 22-R-55, a resolution of the City Council authorizing the City Administrator to enter into an agreement with Donaldson Construction Company, LLC, for micro-sealing of identified streets in the Island Green subdivision. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 22-R-55, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew Nelson, Deputy City Administrator. Council will recall we talked at length about the micro seal contract with Donaldson Construction. This is that portion that we omitted last week for further discussion and consideration. So it is only the Island Green roads in this resolution. It was noted that we didn't have a good exhibit of those roads last week. So we've got some pictures, and then if you scroll through that, then there's the map of those roads as well. Looks like a lot of roads in the Republic. Okay, that's okay. Yep.
Do we have any questions from council?
I have a comment.
Mr. Wilson?
Island Green's been Island Green for a long time. They've been in the city since around 2000. Don't know the exact date. But micro-sealing the deals would be approximately $73,573. Now, that's a lot of money, but if you consider waiting a year or two down the road and you have to overlay them, that's going to bring the price to over $220,000. To me, it's a no-brainer to do it. Now, I know you and Garrett went out and looked at the roads, and I know that there were other people that looked. Would you care to explain how the process went?
Sure. The way we inventory our streets, we have a score sheet. It's done by hand, so we'll either drive or walk most of those streets, and that inventory was completed, I think, in 2019. So there's a compiling of all those scores, and we have an assessment of the condition of the roads. So all of that goes into whether we think that condition warrants a preservation effort or a repair or a complete overhaul. So we have some complete overhauls, all of downtown being one of them. But in the case of Island Green, what you see here is what I would call shrinkage cracking and fatigue cracking. So traditionally, the way industry standard road maintenance would go is as those cracks start to appear, you would crack seal, which is literally just filling the cracks. And then the next effort in preservation is to micro seal. What we're doing with Donaldson is a pressure pave, which is a combination of the two. And you want to do that when you look at pavement life cycles. 20 years is a good life cycle for a pavement before a mill and fill or an overlay. So somewhere in that 20-year window, and preferably in the better condition, is when you want to preserve it. If you wait too long, the micro seal actually doesn't buy you as much time, because what happens is water, all the things get into the cracks, and then what could happen here is in a freeze thaw, the pavement starts to pop out, and that's what turns into a pothole. And once it becomes a pothole, it's really tough to do the micro seal option and get a good product.
So you're saying right now the streets are ideal for the micro sealing?
Yeah. I could say that there's a condition that would be a little bit more ideal. Miller is a road that we micro sealed a few years ago. That was in a more ideal condition. If you think back to Miller at the time, it probably wasn't in a condition quite like this. We were just starting to see some of those fatigue cracks and some of the grass growth. So that is probably an ideal candidate. This one is like we've passed it by a few years. It needs to get done.
As I see it, there's only one way to go, and that's to vote for it because of the difference in the prices between micro sealing and overlaying.
The thing about roads like the ones in Island Green or a lot of any new subdivision post whenever it probably was approved in Republic's history is there's curb and gutter. So you can't just go and overlay. We have to also mill it. So whatever we're going to put in there, say we're going to do 2 inches, we have to go mill out 2 inches and then put it back to align with the concrete curb and gutter. So that's what really elevates the expense in a subdivision like Island Green.
Other questions from council? Mr. Franklin.
Mr. Mayor, Andrew, we had a good talk last week, and so I really appreciate that. I came out of there with a lot more road knowledge, that's for sure. Going back to the constituents, of course, it's a time frame, holiday weekend, it was hard to talk with everybody, but I'm still having a hard sell with this particular resolution. And what a lot of it comes down to is the fact that historically we've been told for such a long time that we don't have money available for roads, and then we jump into some road projects. And again, this is one that when I'm looking at the volume of traffic, I'm having a real difficulty when I'm looking at other roads. And we're looking through the plan that I received last week, which was the transportation report. And the concerns that have been brought to me after our conversation, having some of this information and going back to constituents, is just the fact that some of the roads in Republic that are in dire need of repair are not on this transportation plan. And so kind of, I guess, one question that I have is what sort of funding do we have available? And I know we haven't done the budget for next year, but what is our kind of predetermined or predicted amount to have on road repairs, road constructions for next year?
So if you look at, and you and I, we looked at the 20-year, what I would call pavement maintenance plan. Mm-hmm. And that number's right about 1.2 million annually that we're going to budget from here and through that 20 years. But like I mentioned, that doesn't include capital projects. So if we go to improve an intersection or something, that would take away. But when you look at that 1.2 million, the way we've laid it out to get to every street in Republic over the 20 years, it's split close to 50-50 between crack sealing, micro sealing, and overlays. So in any one year, you could do more or less of one or the other.
So I guess, so kind of what you're saying is that with that 1.2 million annually, with our cost sharing agreements and everything else, could we end up in a situation where we have a year without having money for micro sealing and road repairs other than the larger projects that we're dealing with?
I don't, in the 5-year window, no.
So we should have at least 1.2 million every year for the next 5 years to micro seal, overlay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looking back to the transportation plan and the transportation report, if there's a street that's not on here in this, I don't know what to call it exactly.
Yeah,
transportation report.
That's a first draft of our publication, so it's a little bit outdated. We printed off that one specifically for the Roar Expo just to get information out about the projects we're planning. So what residents will get will be an updated version of that because we've already done the 2022 items on there. So we'll update that to go to 23 and out to several years.
Okay. But that's just I'm still going back to the priority, and it's a hard sell. As I talk to people in Ward 1, certainly we have a list of roads in Ward 1 that are a concern and they've been brought about, but one thing I'm finding especially talking to people in Ward 1, we don't just drive the roads in Ward 1, we drive the roads in every single ward. And so even from constituents in Ward 1, other roads in town, just higher priority. Everyone sees a higher priority. When we look out here at Island Green subdivision, we see a road at the end of town. Almost every road dead ends in a cul-de-sac. The roads need repair. I've been out there 3 times myself. They need repair.
Yeah.
And I've also been all over Republic, and so I can see what my constituents are telling me, and the fact that they see other priorities that would take precedent over something like this.
Yeah, if it's a question of if there are worse streets in Republic than those streets, then the answer is yes. If it's a question of how do you manage that, the need that's $25 million plus over the next foreseeable future, it is a balance of taking care of streets that are in okay condition and the ones that are in bad condition.
Sure.
This one is in okay condition, but if we don't take care of it, it will be in bad condition and then cost us 2-3-fold, which will affect the ability to get to other streets. So if the question is, are there other streets that are in worse condition, the answer is yes.
And that's, and I don't mean to keep going back and forth, it's just that when this subdivision was built, people were waiting for road repairs, and now it's been built, it's being repaired. People are still waiting for those road repairs. And I know that's a 20-year window. Will we get to you in 20 years? Yes. Those people, some of those people have already been waiting for 20 years. And so that's the difficulty I have, and not necessarily my difficulty, but the difficulty in talking to constituents and the fact of seeing this as a priority.
Yeah, it's a big bear to manage when you look at the whole system and how do you prevent a road from becoming a much more of an expenditure than it could be if you did a little bit of maintenance.
The same with all of our other roads that are.
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
it-
No, I see your argument. I can just make
it's
that
a-
argument for every road that I look at. So.
Yeah, it's a bear to manage for sure.
Sure. So, and I'm just asking questions here. If this resolution were to not pass tonight, what would happen to that $73,000?
Well, I don't think we could add anything else at this point. Specifically on micro sealing, we would have to rebid, I believe.
Could we use it for sealing, crack sealing, that sort of stuff, and kind of stretch out that $87,000 to protect more roads than just these 5?
Because of the time of the year, we don't own a crack sealer. So if we had one, then yes, could I buy more material and go seal cracks? Possibly, but the time of the year, what would really happen is we would take this money, if not approved, and put it into 2023's allocation for micro sealing and paving.
And then it would be reprioritized as far as, would council have a chance to kind of look at that before, I guess, next year when?
Yeah, you're going to see in our work sessions all of the plans, and in that publication what we're planning, but just to forecast, Island Green is going to be on that list next year too.
Sure. And a lot of other priority roads.
Yep.
Thank you.
One more comment.
Yes, sir.
You say microsealing that will give it another 20 years, right?
Well, it's not ideal, but what I'm telling you is that because of the plan that we have, it's likely that it won't get any other attention for 20 years. So that plan that we've laid out is getting to each one of those in 20 years and then not coming back to it unless we change the funding for another 20 years. So it will preserve it in its best condition for the next 20 years.
Okay. Well, I have confidence in your decision, so I'll let it go at that.
Mr. Grove.
When you mentioned the plan, is that something that's gonna be available to people that aren't on this council? Something that's easily accessible so that the answer doesn't have to be not right now,
Yeah.
end of sentence, but
Yeah,
it can be not right now, but here's one?
Yes. So the way we've laid out, and this is an undertaking that we really put into motion after the passage of the public safety sales tax in April. So with that new funding, we're building that plan around the available maintenance funds. So with that transportation publication that Mr. Franklin has, the first iteration that we did for the Roar Expo, that plan will have a link to the transportation plan online, and then you can get specific. But the thing about that I want to caution the council and even the public about, beyond 1 or 2 years laying out road projects is tough, because there are things that happen, like let's say we repair a water leak or replace a section of main. All of a sudden a road becomes a priority over the others because we've dug a trench in it. So, outside of the 1 and 2, maybe even the 3-year window, it becomes much more tentative.
Yeah.
So it's out there for information, but it's definitely not the gospel.
Sure, subject to change.
Yep.
Yeah. I do have one more question.
Please.
And I don't mean it to sound
Sure.
accusational at all, but I feel like it's been danced around a little bit. Are we doing Island Green subdivision now as a priority in any way because the houses out there are nicer, the people who live in them have higher incomes?
No.
Okay.
That does not factor.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, you were with Greene County before Republic, right?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been around doing roads or some sort of projects with roads?
I started in transportation in 2006, so 16 years.
I second Mr. Gary's comment. So we task you with putting an efficient plan together. So I appreciate you bringing it to us.
Yeah.
And I'll echo, just real quick, I'll echo what David said last meeting. We haven't done the communication campaign that we're going to do. This being the first year of the increased funding level, our first task was to get as much done as we could. And so, going forward with the study sessions that we're planning and the information that we'll put out, I feel like we'll be a little bit more advised a little bit earlier.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
And I would certainly like to say that between my meeting with Mr. Brickner and Mr. Nelson last week, it was very professional. We had a very good meeting. I have all the confidence in the world in both of you, but I have to go back to the constituents and I have to sell this to them, and that's where my difficulty comes. It's just in that assessment of it as a priority. So I have no doubt, you and Garrett both, you've got my 100% trust. I just look at this process with the kind of breakdown of communication, the fact that we've talked for the last 2 years about how we don't have any money for road funding. We take $600,000, do some overlay, and then pop up again with some micro sealing, and I just feel like it's been a very rushed process. So
Yeah.
as far as being rushed and having a good priority, I'm not as 100% certain on that as I am on both of you as workers here at the City of Republic.
Yeah, prioritization started for us in 2019, but the funding levels were different. And even through this year, just seeing how the new tax would be implemented and what we would collect, we didn't budget for all of that motor fuel sales tax to come back over. And so mid-year, once we start to collect those receipts, we start to understand how much money can actually be regained by the street department.
Sure.
So it's really about putting as much money on the road as soon as we can.
Sure. And one example that we had talked about that afternoon was we were looking at Jewel Street, and Jewel Street is kind of I'm not going to call it a racetrack, but it's a circle street off of a street. It's not a cul-de-sac, but a circle street. And we had talked about how that was one of the last projects the City of Republic had paved. When I look at that situation and I look back at Island Green, I feel like they're very similar in situations. And so that's where I'm very cautious, is just in the fact of what if something happens in the future that we cannot predict, and then we are not allowed to set this money towards the road priorities. So that's where I'm looking at it, is just starting at the highest priority levels first, and then kind of filtering out to subdivisions, dead-end streets, courts, cul-de-sacs, and that sort of thing. So that's where I'm having a difficulty in understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Updike?
What kind of traffic counts is there on Bill? Is it Bill Road actually that connects?
Yes, it
What kind
is.
of traffic counts does Bill Road have compared to some of the other ones that were targeted, like on, let's say, Walnut or any other ones that are in that area?
I don't know that we have a updated traffic count on Bill Street since the new houses in Island Green were built, but I would probably say similar. You can figure that one household's going to generate 10 trips a day. So I don't have the traffic count like here, but I could probably get it. I'm guessing that the traffic count on Bill this is a guess, probably in the neighborhood of 1,200.
When was Island Green actually annexed into the city limits?
Though the Island Green was, I think, approved in 98, if I'm not final platted in 98, so those streets would have been completed at that time.
Completed about 2000.
Yeah, it was.
Plat was in 98.
The final plat was in 98, so we would have accepted. Our process now is to accept it when it's done. I don't know.
That was a process before.
I'm not sure. They could have been a little bit undone at the time.
It's hard to remember two processes.
Right now, we don't final plat until all the infrastructure's done.
Everything is finished.
Yes, correct.
Anything else from council?
Oh, I just see this as a strategic move, correct? That you are, as a local government, it's best run basically like a business. So we do strategy with the future, you see best, use of money. So I see this as you guys using your money in the best way possible by repairing this road. And so I understand we aren't always gonna make all of the people happy at the same time, but I do see this as a strategic move and I really appreciate it and I understand where you're going with it.
Yeah, like I said, it's a big bear to manage, but there's a lot of strategy, and I can't even claim that a lot of that strategy is me. It's a lot of work done by Garrett in the street division to sit down and really collaborate. How are we going to tackle this? What we know is that at the current funding level, it'll take us 20 years to get to every street in some form of maintenance or repair. So if the funding increases or our city grows and we generate more revenue, then we can do more streets and do it faster.
Mr. Updike?
Sorry. In the little map, it says it's future paving on Beale Road to the south end of Island Green. So are we expecting growth or more subdivisions in that area to pop up for annexation, or?
I don't. So when it comes to the area around Island Green, they are served by a lift station that is only large enough to service Island Green. So unless someone was to make a substantial investment into sewer on that end of town, it would be tough. We don't have capacity to, like in most subdivisions, it's a much simpler task. That is so far extended from the city and from the wastewater plant. An individual would have to upgrade the lift station in Island Green and all of the force main all the way back to the plant.
But there is, by the little map that's in our packet, there is future paving from County Line Road on Beale Road all the way down to the south end.
We do, yes. That is a street owned by the City of Republic.
Mr. Franklin?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Nelson, was there any other suggestions that came from council or anywhere else that kind of indicated a priority list of roads that you were giving a concern?
There was not.
Okay. So I feel like we've talked more about roads in the last two meetings than the last couple of years, and so I really do appreciate that. I appreciate all of you answering questions and doing such a great job in doing so.
Anything else from council? I do know that we have a citizen here. Debbie Allen would wish to speak in favor of this. Good evening, ma'am.
In favor, yes.
Yes.
My name is Debbie Allen. I live at 104 Long Drive in the Island Green subdivision. I am the 8th homeowner in Island Green to move here from Aurora. We have 8 families from Aurora in the subdivision. And I'm on the HOA board. I moved over here 2 years ago. And I golfed there in the early 2000s for many years and then stopped for a while and came back. And then we sold our house in Aurora, moved here 2 years ago. And so I started asking some of the neighbors, because I knew everybody, because I golfed there all the time. And I'm going, like, what's up with the streets here? You know, they're looking really bad. And so anyway, they said, well, they thought in the mid-90s when Dale Boatwright built it, that the roads were in first before the subdivision. Now we have probably 53 homes. We have 5 lots left. 4 of those 5 lots are owned by homeowners, and it's the lot adjoining their home. So they've bought it so no one will build next to them. And so we have only 1 lot left that either another homeowner's gonna buy so nobody will build, or a contractor owns it,
Yes,
will
ma'am.
build in the future. So I called Garrett last year and I said, you know, in Aurora, I knew the street department guys and we always got it done twice on our street. And it was a cul-de-sac street, so not traveled at all. We do have the trash trucks, one way in, one way out, and the school buses. And yes, it is a subdivision. It's a desirable place to live. I know the turnover because it is a small community, but I'm on the HOA board. And so I'm very much involved with new homeowners, welcoming them, you know, letting them know if they have any question with our HOAs. And we have had, you know, a few talk about the roads because, you know, if we do get some businesses coming in, it looks good when the wife and the husband goes house shopping. But it is a desirable neighborhood. We keep it nice because our HOA, and they've really worked hard in all these years. But I am out there myself with weed killer in my golf cart killing the weeds because I was always told in Aurora when I worked on our street there, and we'd get cracks, and they have really gotten worse this year from last winter.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, it was bad before last winter, but this year really did it in. And our curbing is in good condition, but we're getting grass, and they always told me keep that grass dead because once your moisture gets in there and it freezes, then you're gonna have the potholes. It's gonna start popping up, and we don't want it to pop up around our curbing and lose that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm just letting you know the process that I've done for the last year and what I'm doing, and trying to tell some of the homeowners, get your own weed killer out and do it. But anyway, so basically, you know, I know it's not a high trafficked area, I get that. And I understand roads have been here that probably been pushed on the back burner. But, you know, at least just consider us getting on the books, because I listened to the Zoom meeting twice and I couldn't always hear what was being said or what the reasoning was for, you know, contemplating not doing Island Green. But I just didn't know, you know, I guess you had no money for a while, and now you do. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
or when we could maybe be on the books.
Thank you. Any other citizens wishing to speak? All right. As this is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of Resolution 22-R-55, please vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstaining. Resolution carries 6-2. Moving on to item number 9 on our agenda, this is 22-R-56, a resolution of the City Council awarding the bid for sandblasting and repainting of the water tower located at Well 6 to Hogan's, Inc. I need a motion and a second to take up Resolution 22-R-56.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Brickner.
Good evening. Garrett Brickner, Assistant Builds Administrator. So, the city went out to sealed bid for sandblasting and repainting of the water tower at Well 6. This is part of our plan to utilize the savings from the ARPA dollars to repaint all the towers in town. So we're just doing 6 first because it is the most ready. But if you recall, a couple weeks ago we brought to you the Hankins wastewater project that was initially planned to be closer to $1.9 million. And it came in at $1.1 million. So we're planning to use the savings from that, which was ARPA dollars to begin with, to go ahead and repaint these towers. These are, sandblasting and repainting is extremely expensive. So this is a good opportunity for us to move forward with getting that done, and will hopefully offset some potential rate increases that would have to happen in order to cover this expense in the future. So we had 2 bidders on this, the lowest of which was Hogan's, Inc. And Hogan's, the Tanemic paint they actually put on there, they have a 15-year warranty on that. And they have towers that have lasted for well over 20 years with regular power washing and maintenance. So there are 4 items here. There's the base bid for painting. There's alternate 1, which is for containment. Alternate 2, which is for painting the inside of the tower. We're actually still waiting on the inspectors we hired to check the inside of the tank to let us know if we need to do that or not. It's not expected at Well 6, but we did want to put it on here just in case it is. And then alternate 3 is to reapply the lettering. If you've gone by on James River Freeway, you've noticed that tower doesn't have any lettering on it anymore because it got blasted off the last time we power washed. So We're hoping to just do the base bid and alternate 3, but we're still waiting on confirmation whether we can not do the containment and not do the alternate 2, which is the inside. So
Thank
I'd
you,
be
sir.
happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Mr. Franklin.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Brickner, so this resolution, does this cover the base bid and all 3 alternatives? Or are we
Yes.
just, we're kind of basically approving all 4 of these combined total,
Potentially, yes.
potentially? And that's just for 1 tower?
Yep.
5 more to go?
No, 2 more to go.
2 more? Just
So well 6 is our 6th well. We actually only have 3 water towers and then a ground storage tank.
Gotcha.
So not that many, but it is an extremely expensive ordeal.
So then we're probably looking at something similar when the other 2 come
Yes.
up.
Yeah, we plan to do the other 2 next year. So I failed to mention there's a timing aspect to this. Well 6 is the most ready to go. It's the easiest to take offline of the system if we needed to and still be able to pump water throughout the system. This has to be, they have to have the tower painted before November or they can't do their warranty on it because of the temperatures. So we're planning on doing this one now, another one in the spring, and then the last one next fall.
Mr. Franklin.
Well number 6 being the one without that had everything sprayed off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well 6 is the one out.
North of 60 there.
Yes.
Yeah, one, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Garrett, is this just for aesthetics, or does it help protect the?
No, it is
water?
standard maintenance. So it also looks bad, but you start to get growth on it, which can actually corrode the tank itself.
Okay.
So it is a maintenance thing.
Mr. Mayor, can I, really quick, this
Yes.
for the edification of the council members. The city clerk put a paper resolution on at each of your seats for the meeting. That is simply because there was a slight change between what was placed in the packet. And the second whereas clause, there is simply an addition that specifies that the cost for this is, like Mr. Brickner had said, it would be coming out of ARPA funds. So just to explain that change, and that's why it's placed in front of you.
Ms. Poole, did I see you raise your hand?
Yes. The one on Hines Street, how soon are you talking about doing it? It's pitiful.
It is. I would like to do it the one we do in the spring next year.
Well, it'll be really rotten by then.
Is there a reason we can't do that one first?
It is,
Because I don't want Ms. Poole mad at anybody.
So we would have to build containment on that one most likely due to its proximity to additional residential houses and the school. That is additional time. It'd take about a month to do that, and then hopefully a month to get the sandblasting and painting done if they hurry. So we are running into that November deadline. That is why we are not doing that one first.
But you're estimating next spring.
Yes.
Other questions from council? Mr. Franklin?
I've got a bit of a gross question for you, and just curiosity. Does that same stuff that grows on the outside grow on the inside, or is that kind of kept full enough that that's not an issue?
You can get growth on the inside. That's why we're having inspection
inspection
done on
and
the
then
inside to
possible
make sure that it
alternate.
has still got the protective coating on it.
Gives it kind of that slick, I was just curious.
Mr. Updike, did I see you raise or did Eric take your question?
Oh, sort of. So if they do graphics on the tower, are we gonna have the correct spelling on it? Because I know a few years ago they did a misspelling on the tower.
I'm sure Mr. Brickner will make sure it's spelled
There will be
correctly.
an R on the tower, like that orange logo with a circle. No tigers. We got one on the highway.
Any other questions? Seeing none, and as this is a resolution, I will call immediately to a vote. So all those in favor of 22-R-56, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution passes 8-0. Moving on to our final item on the agenda. This is item number 10, 22-R-57, a resolution of the City Council authorizing the city administrator to partner with the Springfield Greene County Library for a potential land transaction as an in-kind contribution to bring a new library to the City of Republic. I need a motion and a second to take up this resolution.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have also provided in a handout tonight some details, and Ryan, I believe this was provided to you for the press as well. The amenities that are being detailed by the Springfield Greene County Library. So just a little backstory, going back to probably is in the middle of COVID. I met with the Springfield Greene County Libraries Association. They wanted a presentation of the growth and development, what we anticipated as they were planning for their future. Obviously, they have a library on Highway 174 here in Republic, and so they have been looking like seeing our growth numbers and the trends that have been taking place. What did they need to plan for accordingly? And so during this last legislative session, you may or may not be aware that they were also in the same bill as we were awarded the $25 million. They were awarded $4.5 million as a match. So the actual cost of the library that is on the screen, is this being shared on our live feed as well? Okay, so this graphic is just an architectural rendering of what they had that they recently provided. And so the space, I do not believe 100% is provided in the outline of the overall size. It does not tell me the square footage, but it's, quite frankly, at this stage, it's not relevant because it's a conceptual. But so we began to talk about, they had originally asked if the city was willing to contribute cash for that, which was not something that I believed we could represent, because from a cash position, after just passing ballot measures to take care of public safety, having cash available would be very, number one, we need to have a number of other things. We've talked about streets, staffing, all the other things that we've been behind in as a community for several years. So I said, but we do have a parcel at the corner of Oakwood and 170 that was purchased in 2015, 16 for the potential of a city hall. Whereas the growth and development of the community has transitioned away. We're going more towards the water tower. We're talking about the acquisition of the land for the parks. And so we're viewing the MM corridor potentially as a future site of potentially a city hall, library, schools, parkland especially. So potentially locating this property out near the new MM corridor on the, what would be the southeast side of Amazon, behind the fuel, out by the fuel station. So what we're asking for is just a resolution authorizing us, or just your awareness that we are going to proceed with an intergovernmental agreement with them, that we would draft an intergovernmental agreement with Springfield Greene County that would have some language for us, for you ultimately still to approve. This is just authorization to proceed. It's still subject to your approval of the intergovernmental agreement. So if we were to donate land or in kind, the sale of our land to go out and help procure the land for a future library for them to help meet their match, they'll still need to come up with an additional $4.5–5 million to complete the project. Should the money not happen, because under the ARPA guidelines, for those, just a little backdrop, is those funds have to be spent by 2026. That's why we were very capable of receiving those funds and spending them by that deadline. Should they not receive those funds, why an intergovernmental agreement is necessary is, should we sell our land and have these funds and purchase an acquisition, an intergovernmental agreement would say we're not on the hook. We get to recover our funds, and or it has to be kept in escrow. There is a mechanism that allows for us not to have, like, whoops, we bought it, now the project's dead. So there's the intergovernmental agreement says there's kind of some steps that have to take place. You'll be voting on those steps, and we would agree with those processes and bring those back. All tonight is a permission to proceed with an intergovernmental agreement, that you're aware that I am working on that in a more detailed fashion, and I have permission somewhat to go out and market our property, bring back to you an acquisition potentially that would purchase other land. And so with that, all the information that they're wanting to include in the library in the future, just for what they're looking to do with it, is provided in this exhibit that I've handed out for you. But other than that, I would be more than willing to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from council? Seeing none.
One more point, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Councilmember Poole, you mentioned last week what would happen to the old library. I do have it on that I would suspect that they would sell the property, which is what has been communicated, and I feel very comfortable sharing that. Though what I would potentially see them doing is selling that property to help pay for the construction of the new facility. She asked that question at a previous conversation.
Any other questions? Seeing none, and as this is a resolution, we can call it immediately for a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of 22-R-57, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0 to 1. Moving on to reports from staff. Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to bring to your attention, it was not on the schedule, even though the awkward moment of silence or what we were going to add to the agenda next time. Awkward silence should be right before the opening prayer at the next meeting. I like that. But I'm going to ask for a work session on September 20th to discuss our favorite topic, which is wastewater. Not that there is a problem, but as we continue to evolve into a large-scale administrative order, we have new members on this council that were not privy or aware of that story. And so at 5 o'clock prior to the next council meeting, what I'd like to do is just give an up-to-date, a little historical overview. I promise not to geek out in it. It's just going to be to go over the why. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to record that piece, because one of the things that we're taking a concerted focus on more is our communication. I've been asked a lot, are we recording our state of the cities? Are we recording, when I give presentations, sometimes they're just not recorded and people are not allowed to see what the discussions that have taken place. And so what I want to do is make sure there's a little bit of a history lesson also as to the status of where we're at, the funding that what we have, but also just to bring everyone up to speed, because rate increases are no fun. I mentioned it at the last meeting, and we of all people do not want to submit those. But at the same time, as we've mentioned back in 2020, we brought back what the administrative order was to keep the mayor out of jail when he signed from a 2011 issue that the city, just chose. I wouldn't say to ignore, just wasn't that aware to have it. I would almost suggest the staff wasn't really sure what to do, nor the city, but it comes at a hefty price tag and it will cost. And so raising the $25 million at the legislature the last meeting, or the last session, was huge to our community. And I don't know if I appreciate Ryan and the press taking care of that and notarizing. I mean, notifying the community through the paper of what that work was done, but we've got to continue to get that message out. So 2 weeks from tonight, or no, actually it will be 2 weeks from tonight, I want to present that. We're going to have some very elementary discussion to help explain it with someone who was to ask you those questions as what it is, because this is a big issue for us that we have to address by 2025, and we are working diligently for it. We have a meeting in Kansas City on October 3rd to get an update, and so I'm hoping by that meeting to give at the next meeting in 2 weeks just to give you all there. So at 5 o'clock, it will be televised, it will be recorded, it'll be provided on our website for that. Tonight, I also want to congratulate Andrew Nelson, who has been appointed into a full-time deputy city administrator role, which means I also want to thank or congratulate Karen Haynes, who has now been moved to the builds administrator role. And as you heard Garrett Brickner say tonight, I want to congratulate you as you've moved now into the assistant builds administrator role. So congratulations to you. Laura, congratulations to you again on the work that you're doing. I will say this, that you all, just listening to the conversations that you're here at every city council meeting, I mentioned it today at the chamber, we're working on over $250 million worth of infrastructure. And I want to put that in perspective. I haven't given that, I'm giving it in broad strokes, because all the streets, the water, the sewer, the parks. But if you all recall, whenever we were excited to get the money for 174 and 60 to improve that intersection was $2.5 million, and I think I was going to jump up and down high five. But to see the amount of money that we've been able to raise for this community to do that, I really do credit the work that this staff has done to help in the places that we've gone to help create it. I guarantee you the amount of money that moves through that office, they have covered for it in their work and helped us recover those funds. But there's not a promotion that's any more deserved. But I think it also speaks to the amount of work that we have going on. And so it's not getting easier, it's getting a little bit more difficult. And I appreciate the conversation tonight. One thing that I want to make very clear is that my staff and even myself, we don't see ward lines. They see street and the condition of it. So we have constituents too, but for us, what they have to look at is what is that street saying to them? And so they don't really necessarily get to pick and choose. And I appreciate the comment. I'm an avid golfer, but I promise you, I've never we've never discussed your street. What I do is I have to rely upon it. So I appreciate the comment that, 5 years ago, there was not one PE on this staff. We have 4 now that are basically sitting there analyzing what it is. those are the same PEs that told you to spend $150 million to improve your sewer. And we're spending it, we're taxing our citizens to do it. So I appreciate the work they're doing. They do not get to see ward lines. They have to look at it and provide me a recommendation. They got to provide it to you. And so I appreciate the work. It's hard, and it is it is a big issue. And I know you have to answer. We all do.
He called it a bear.
A bear.
Yeah, it's on your mind. I get it.
But it's kind of like I was telling staff, if you could see the condition of sewer lines under the street and get to show those to residents, they would not care. They'd just say, just fix it. What's the one you need to fix? And so there's a lot of stuff underground that we don't get to see that cost us an immense amount of money. And so it's like I have to depend upon those engineers that we've hired to do that. And I'm not saying that people don't have input. It's just they're not picking and choosing based upon favoritism. They're kind of like, hey, if I'm being held accountable for the outcome in my annual performance review of whatever I've taken care of, am I giving you the best recommendation? So our number one error, and Andrew said it, and we're going to work extremely hard to do it, is our communication piece. But we've been talking through the budget for the last 6 years that we've been short on funding. We have not just said it. You all have seen the same numbers that I have. And so it's important, and I thank the voters for last August of how paramount it was. But if you recall, and I want to clarify something, Andrew, you said, just because I want not to step back over it. I want to clarify a point. We cannot bind a future council on whether we guarantee we're going to spend $1.2 million or not. Because if this council decides tomorrow that they want to fix Main and 174, and it takes up all $6 million of our money, that's a decision you all can make. So that's just things that happen. If there's enough calls saying, hey, listen, we need to fix that in front of the school more than fix these side streets, that's a decision that you're going to have to make. But for them just to take care of routine maintenance, I appreciate the work that you guys have done. And I'm not suggesting anyone's saying they're not doing that. I'm just suggesting the basis by how we make our decisions. And so, Megan, great job on the policies. I think that from a process perspective, making sure we're right with the audit and taking care of those things. And I do applaud the staff. I applaud this council. I will tell you, in this market, it is so hard. Pipe prices are lasting for 24 hours. So for you what I love about in our mission statement, I wrote it down, processes, relationships, and trust. It's on one of these papers. One of the processes that we're constantly evolving and you allow us to do is in a purchasing policy. You will not find many communities, go and look at their agendas and see how often they change the purchasing policy. But to allow us the latitude to maneuver with the market allows us to move with the development community, that if there is a 10% price fluctuation in pipe, you just gave this staff the ability to maneuver and move with that situation, thus not delaying the developer, costing them more. And so having it with a 1-year sunset that we bring it back to you is the accountability that our citizens need and this council wants. So I just want to applaud you for constantly looking and thinking outside the box to improve the processes, to make it better for the community, for you to do your job. And so, but Mrs. Poole, I probably gripe about Hines Street water tower and the pothole that, yes, it got fixed. And so I agree with you, but the paint that was put on there might have been one of the cheaper paint jobs, and so it's not supposed to have green grass growing. And Councilmember Franklin, usually it's not grass growing inside the tank. It's usually, if the paint job inside the tank goes bad, it's rust. And so it's kind of, they're great questions. I just think they're like.
I certainly hope it doesn't look the same on the inside.
No. But you know what they do? They send divers in there. So maybe next time we send a diver in, we could have you go inspect it.
No.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
I was going to climb it up and look at it.
No, ma'am.
And
No, you're not. No.
I really was going to, and I was sick when they were getting ready to paint it. That's when I was mayor.
I will not be doing that as mayor. Yeah, I'm good. Reports from council. Mr. Franklin.
You don't have to go all the way to Colorado to find bears. I think there was one even hit on the road, like right out here. But no, I don't have a lot. I'll be very short. I appreciate Garrett and Andrew, both of you last week. Great conversation. A couple hours we got to sit down. I really appreciate that. That gave me a lot of information, gave me a lot of things to take to constituents. So I very much appreciate that. Congratulations to everybody. I'll just do kind of a blanket statement, and thank you very much for everything.
Any other statements? Yes, sir.
How are these seats chosen? Like, if, say, someone is much smaller than someone else, and the action's taking place, there's a lot. Like, when I stand up, I'm 3 of Jennifer's, just stacked up right in front of me.
Look, if you want to move away from her, I don't blame you.
Wait, just maybe switching. Is that a clerk thing? Did you get? Is that part of your award?
Yeah, she called dibs. I mean,
I got put in the corner automatically over here, so.
Yeah, you're a big guy too. I just feel bad because she's staring at my just whole back every time we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I think Laura is probably the reason I'm over here in the corner.
Okay. All right.
well,
You guys just switch them? That'd be good.
thank you, sir. Bringing issues to the forefront. You know, we see pictures of David and Andrew on magazines and in the community. We see, you know, our friend Parks and Rec out there all the time. But what I love is that we are starting to get some notoriety for the people that want to hide in the corner and be really quiet, you know? And that's what's showing that Republic's doing well. Is even, like, I sat down next to her at a football practice and I didn't recognize her. She was just like incognito. It was. So some people don't like the limelight, and I get that in theory. But the point is, it's the people that do their job well that are getting recognized that I love. That showing that other people, other communities, those 3 clerks contacted me and said they wanted to surprise Laura with this because they knew how hard it was to do, and they left their cities to come here to recognize her and on their own time. And that's just cool and appropriate. And congratulations.